show for you today. City Council has just recently approved their fourth and final budget, and there's a lot of talk about this as we head into a municipal election year. Joining us today to talk all about it are panelists Jared Zaifman. He's a past member of London City Council, and he's also the CEO for the London Homebuilders Association. And also joining us is Kelly Ziegner. She's the CEO and president of the Elgin Middlesex United Way. I'll tell you all about it right after this.
Winter's here. It's time to discover the Bicycle Cafe. Cozy up with our daily soup and sandwich, or unwind with an evening latte and Dutch comfort food. London Bicycle Cafe at the Forks of the Thames. See you soon.
Okay, back in 2014, London City Council made the switch to a 4-year, multi-year budget, and this practice continues to today. The idea is to plan out the entire 4-year term in year one so that civic administration, funded boards and commissions, community partners, and Londoners have some predictability as they make plans for the years ahead. At the beginning of each term, Council approves or adjusts the budget that the previous Council set for them. They also map out what the next 4 budgets, including the first year of the following term, will look like. And even with a multi-year budget, the Municipal Act requires Council to conduct a review every 12 months. And this allows City Council to make tweaks and changes for the years ahead. It's an interesting 4-year budget because the cumulative increase in property taxes was 24.5%. That's a record, at least for this century. It also means that if you were paying $4,000 in property taxes at the beginning of this term, you'll be paying $4,980 beginning next year. It was a bold political move, and as we enter into an election year, this decision is shaping up to be one of the first citywide election issues. The other was Council's decision to increase their pay by 35%. That's something we can expect candidates to be talking about and Londoners to be thinking about as they prepare to go to the polls. So that's the background. Let's get into the analysis. Kelly and Jared, welcome to Newsmakers.
It's great to be here.
Excellent to be here with you guys.
So let's get going. First off, the budget cycle is complete. All 4 budgets have been approved. What jumps out at you most when you think about that process and when you think about the outcome?
Yeah, so I mean, it's, I will say, 4 years, this council had a difficult job. We were coming out of a pandemic or coming out of the midst of one. And, I will say, it's been some higher increases over the first couple of years, bringing it down in this last year, which, frankly, is good to see. Cost of living has gone up. It's been really challenging for a lot of folks. And, I will say even from the home building industry, sort of post-COVID, we saw an increase in approximately 65% in the cost of construction of new homes. Costs went up all over, and it's been really challenging to deal with. And I think, probably the one biggest factor would be the police budget. I think that was certainly a large number, and we're trying to deal with the challenges that exist in the community, especially since COVID. It really sort of put a magnifying glass on some of the challenges with homelessness, but also some criminality, especially in the core and certain areas of the city. So I think there was a need to respond, and I think that's sort of where this council went. Certainly wasn't without some conflict around that decision, but I would say that was probably the biggest area we saw.
Yeah, we'll probably spend a little bit of time talking about that today as well. Kelly, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, as Jared said, us at United Way, we've had to go through budgeting processes too, and it kind of all bets were off post-pandemic. Like everything, cost of everything was through the roof. So, just your day-to-day operating, everything was much more expensive. So I think, no matter what kind of organization you're running, whether a municipality, a nonprofit, or a corporation, everyone was dealing with these increased expenses. We too are, feeling some of the challenges that you're indicating when it comes to like police budget and the core, community grants. There was lots of conversations and directions that council could have went. I'm a big fan of the saying 2 things can be true at once, and I think that's part of the issue. As I saw it from the police budget perspective, is yes, I think we know that, and we heard loud and clear that we were underserviced in terms of policing. So there was, investment required, though, I think we always like to look at things from root cause, right? And so is, maybe more investment in some, street level community-based care, social services could have been supporting, and working in tandem with that police budget.
Yeah, for sure. And since you both talked about the police budget, which makes a lot of sense, it was a significant reason why this increase is as large as it is. So let's talk about that for a little bit longer. Now, I hear you both saying that the budget, it needed to increase. The city's growing and the challenges are growing along with it. I was watching some of those debates back in 2023. It might seem like a long time ago now.
It's a lifetime ago.
I watched Skylar Frank, chief, about a few line items in the budget. And this, I think, is worth talking about. Skylar Frank asked for 2 electric vehicles to be removed from the budget. And the police chief at the time said it wouldn't make for a safe city. And so to me, that it felt very, very immovable. And also at the same time, you'll remember the Police Service Board ran a campaign, $104,000, I think, with basically a marketing branding company to, I think, really say this had to happen now. So my question for you is, if you could do it all over again, do you think it needed to happen at this pace? And do you think that things were nice to haves and not have to haves?
Well, I think when you're looking at a 4-year increase in the double digits, I think you have to look at what are the nice to haves and what are the need to haves. And I think all of the boards and commissions had to do that, whether it's the library, transit, I think they all came forward with really strong business cases, and everybody had to sort of, pick what are the things that are most essential. And it doesn't feel like that happened in the same way. And then that also has to be balanced with the affordability for Londoners and for residents, right, that are deeply challenged. So too is everybody feeling the increase in costs and inflationary pressures in their pocketbooks and at their kitchen tables. So I think those are the exercises I think that are really important. Is what's a need to have and what's a nice to have.
How about you, Jared?
Well, I think you might have said electric vehicles, that Skylar wanted electric vehicles removed. And
yeah.
I would be surprised that Skylar wanted electric vehicles removed. Yeah. Maybe armored.
Yeah.
Well, though that came up as well. But it was, do we really need to have 2 electric vehicles? Yeah. And you know what? It's 2025 and that was 2023, and I'm over 50, so I could be wrong too.
But I would say that it's tough. I mean, whether it needed to be done at once or not, I think is certainly a valid question. I think from the police perspective, and I don't know how the board deliberations went, but I think it's not. You would see often from boards and commissions wanting to try and get what they're looking for all at once, and also at the same time being able to plan appropriately over a time horizon that they can know what they're getting and what they're looking at. And I know that I think police services across the province are being challenged and trying to find good recruits and trying to be able to retain good folks. And I know, it was the first, I think it was last year, the police ball, I think it was, raising funds for a lot of good local initiatives. But that with Chief Trong and hearing from a lot of the officers about the impact, and it could just be a him thing, but just the impact that he and also, I think additional resources have had, especially for mental health for officers, has been a big difference. I think those problems and those challenges are getting harder and harder. At the same time, and we couldn't have predicted this at the time of this budget, but when this budget when this council first came in, we were kind of riding these tailwinds in the home building industry, where it was probably the hottest, busiest time we've ever had in the city's history. But then even a year or two later, things started to change. And a lot of our members have been looking for work, have been looking for opportunities, and also identifying and seeing where they've been leaned on to say, how can this community help with the homelessness efforts in London? And so I think when we talk about the police budget, it often almost goes hand in hand with that issue specifically. And the chief and the police, I would say, recognize that they can only do so much to help tackle that issue, but are doing a good job where they can. But where does housing come into play? And I think that's where some of even our members would say, could some of that funding have potentially gone into, could we have utilized that for our members to be able to build homes that are so needed in our community? which could maybe help take some pressures off as well. So there's a balance to be found, but at the same time, the decisions are made now, and I think we're seeing some of the results, which is really positive. And I think over the long term, London's going to be in a better position as a result of it. We needed additional service, we needed increased resources within the police, and we're a growing community with growing challenges. So, I think we're in a better position as a result of it. But again, could something have been differently? Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that the chief's goal was really to modernize policing, and there's no question in my mind that that's happened. I also live and work downtown, and I see a lot of positive reaction to a nurse walking with the London Police Service officers, sometimes a mental health care worker, and it's a different approach than we would have seen 10 years ago.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got about 3 minutes left in this segment, and what I wanted to ask you about now is that, well, you both run not-for-profit corporations, and you report to a board. And your board expects you to make sure you keep in mind that there's no mission without a margin. And so you want to, have a little bit of a surplus, but keep it really tight. Last year, City Council had a $60 million surplus in a budget that, is over $1 billion. So that's about a 5% surplus. What are your thoughts on that, Kelly?
I mean, it's challenging, right? As a taxpayer, and people are trying to reconcile. Well, my taxes went up this much, but then there's this giant surplus. So I think it becomes a really challenging communications problem for the city and for council. I think sometimes we have surprises, positive and negative in budgets, and things happen. It's something to deal with. But I think in the context of such large increases for taxpayers, I think that becomes a real conundrum.
Right.
Yeah.
And 60 million surprises is a lot. Normally, you're looking at the say $2 to $5 million surplus on a council budget. We're just going to take a break, and we'll pick this up with you, Jared, when we come back.
Winter's here. It's time to discover the Bicycle Cafe. Cozy up with our daily soup and sandwich, or unwind with an evening latte and Dutch comfort food. London Bicycle Cafe at the Forks of the Thames. See you soon.
Okay, Jared, just before that break, we were talking about the $60 million surplus that council experienced last year. What are your thoughts?
So, I think we've certainly from the industry side of things always advocated that if there is a surplus, oftentimes the reason that we get into that position is because of assessment growth, because there's been economic benefit in the city. And a lot of that often is driven by the building industry, the construction industry. We're a large reason why that growth tends to happen. It's not always easy and accurate to predict on a $1 billion+ budget how you're going to land. Certainly $60 million is a large number. How that gets allocated and whether or not that's appropriate. I mean, I think from a not-for-profit perspective, we're always trying to be conservative, and municipalities are not allowed to run deficits legally. So it's certainly a question of, as far as trying to be conservative, because you're trying to ensure that you're not running into a deficit position and being conservative, but also trying to do right for the citizens of London. And so I think one of the challenges that we personally saw was that there was now a change in how the province allowed for discounting and rebates for development charges. And of that $60 million, the municipality used $16 million of that to backfill development charges. Again, good to see that, but now we're sort of running into more challenges with that with the new budget. But the municipality had to find a way to be able to backfill that without that leading to an even higher burden on the taxpayers. And so understand they did that for that reason. But still, $60 million, it is a fair, significant number.
Yeah. Okay. And let's go to development charges next. I need you to back up one step, because a lot of people at home are going to be wondering what exactly that is and why it's important. And I know that you've got some concerns about where we're going moving forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, development charges broadly are charges. I mean, some would call it a tax, some would call it a fee. Essentially on every new house, any type of new housing unit that gets constructed in your municipality. Ontario has its own sort of regime around development charges. They are different across the country, so it's not that simple. So it actually is even a bit more complicated. But broadly, and sort of the original idea behind it was sort of growth paying for growth, or that new private residential development or commercial, but mostly residential, would pay for infrastructure that would go to service those new sites.
So this is sewer, water, Those sorts of things, the hard services. Okay.
Although at the same time, the province over the years did expand what that was allowed to be used for. So now it could be community centers, it could be for fire halls, it could be for a wide number of things, including cycling infrastructure.
Softer infrastructure.
Softer infrastructure. And certainly, we may have some questions about that. But so the province, I would say, in their wisdom, allowed for no longer to have development charges for affordable housing and for some other type of housing as well. And so as a result of that, now essentially municipalities are on the hook to say, well, how are we going to fund this now? Because yes, it's great that we're having affordable housing and care homes and a couple other pieces in there that no longer need to pay for this, which helps make those more affordable to build. But the city still needs to be able to build the infrastructure to support those.
Give us an example of that.
Again, in any of the affordable housing that's been built in London over the last couple of years, or last 2 years now, that has been waived, and so they haven't needed to pay for those. And so as a result of that, now the city is now on the hook to say, okay, we used to be getting in X percent sort of on a per unit basis for those development charges for that infrastructure. And so now what we're seeing is in the current budget that the council has put forward, or the mayor and council have put forward, we're seeing some infrastructure projects needing to be pushed out because the city is finding that they're not bringing in now enough in development charges to be able to cover the infrastructure that they need to provide for some of these major assets. For example, the widening of Wonderland Road, which is certainly on the minds of many Londoners as a way to get around the city as a major thoroughfare that's gotten very congested. And even for newer growing areas of the city, like the widening of Sunningdale Road between Richmond and Adelaide. In this budget, those projects have got pushed out as a result of this.
Right. Those are great examples. I think that, it just goes without saying that if you subsidize one area, then another area has to pick up that cost. Kelly, I'm not going to ask you about development charges. What I'm going to ask you about is a research study that United Way Canada conducted this past fall, and the results were available today.
Yeah, so this is about financial anxiety across the country. And so we were certainly hearing this anecdotally, right? We speak to agency partners all the time, and, we're hearing about this increase in need and people really finding themselves in a tough spot, more month than money, as I like to say. And, it always was sort of at the lowest end of the income level, or people who are already living in poverty feeling it, but that is creeping up, and we wanted to sort of understand that impact. And so through the study across the country, we found that 50% of Canadians were feeling financial anxiety, and that it was manifesting in actual physical symptoms, right? Heart palpitations, not being able to sleep at night. And for me, probably the most concerning statistic that came out of that was about 40% of people said that they couldn't last more than a month if they lost their primary source of income. So when if you're a senior living on a fixed income and you're trying to, stay in your home and pay your taxes, all of these increases just keep layering on top of each other and causing those anxieties and challenges for folks.
Right. I can certainly understand that. And I believe I heard recently 1 in 4 people who are accessing food bank today have a job. Yeah. And so talk about that creeping up along the income scale. This is an important topic, I think, because some people will think, the budget had to be increased by 24.5% because of all the reasons that were discussed today and some others. And then some people will say, actually, we need to look at it in this context. Poverty is on the rise, the community's hurting. What are the need to have items and what are the nice to have items? And so a lot of people would think that property tax is only paid by homeowners. And that's true. They do pay a substantial portion. But property tax also affects the rental market. And I think that fits in with what you're talking about, Kelly and Jared. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that actually comes up almost every year when there is a tax increase. A lot of our members are also property owners, and we're fortunate to have a lot of great landlords in the community that are our members. And we have a lot of actually folks in London that build a lot of rental that stay here in the community, and not a lot from outside necessarily. So a lot of care. But at the same time, when there is a tax increase, that increase also goes onto these larger apartment buildings. It's not that they're all of a sudden just they don't get impacted by it. And so it's all well and good for people to want their landlord to be able to just eat that cost. But again, when you get a 7-8%, even a 3.5% increase, that cost has to be borne somehow. And these landlords just can't make that work into their costs. They have to make their finances work as well. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of that cost ends up getting borne on to the renters themselves. And so it's a challenge, right? And trying to figure out how to balance these, where even for those in that situation, how do you balance where those costs go and distributing those? It's not something they can sort of bear forever, and it becomes very cumbersome. But then it becomes very difficult for renters as well. And so we find ourselves in a difficult situation. And certainly the overall tax increase always has that growing impact.
For sure. And I think that's something that's really important for folks with rental units. That's where they're living today, because their voting rates tend to be a little bit lower than folks who own property in the community. And so it does matter. It matters for your rent, particularly if your unit was built prior to November 2018. And so the owners of the larger buildings would be facing a real pinch on control of the amount that it's allowed to increase each year, and then along with the tax rate as well. Yeah. Kelly, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this conversation points to bigger issues, where cities can only raise money in very limited ways, development charges, property taxes, right? There is really no other mechanisms. And then, we have sort of these upstream problems like, mental health, which should be funded provincially, is ending up as a challenge on our city streets that then policing has to deal with, right? So if we were addressing some of these concerns at higher levels of government, municipalities wouldn't have to bear the cost in quite the same way that they are now.
Right. All of these issues really can boil down to healthcare issues, not municipal issues.
Yeah.
You know what? That was a great conversation, but I'm afraid we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, that's the show. It's also the final podcast episode, likely for 2025. You never know. Stay tuned. And as always, as you were listening, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you know a little bit more about this term of council's 4-year budget and a bit more about how property taxes work too. As we gear up for 2026, I think we'll be hearing more about this issue. Some will support the increases Londoners have experienced over the past 4 years. Some won't. At least 11 of the current members of council have announced plans to run for re-election, and this topic is sure to come up on the campaign trail. They'll be largely running on their records, including this bold political decision. Their challengers will be doing exactly that, highlighting or questioning decisions made by incumbents and sharing new ideas and policy platforms of their own. Let me just say, when the time comes, if you're running for council for the first time or for re-election, we'd love to have you on a future episode. We'll do what we need to do to ensure it's a level playing field for all of the contenders, and that this show can serve as a platform for Londoners to get to know candidates and help inform their vote. These days, it's hard to cut through the noise to deliver local news, and you deserve to get as much information from as many different sources as possible. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. And here's a question. In your opinion, given everything you know, are you in support of this approximately 24.5% increase, or are you opposed? Let us know. The email address is themattbrownpodcast@gmail.com. Share your reason why you feel the way you do, and include the ward that you live in too. When we're back in the new year, we'll dedicate a portion of the show to read your responses. Do us a favor though, keep your email on the short side so we can fit as many letters into the segment as possible. And that's the show. I'm Matt Brown, and you've been listening to the Matt Brown Podcast. As always, thanks for listening. Bye for now, and talk to you again soon, London.